Today is all about reflection. I'll spend this video talking about the meaning of reflection, what kind of reflective writing we'll be doing in this course, why we do reflective writing, and why it is so important for you as a student and as a writer to develop that skill. And then there will be another video in which I will discuss and go over the first reflective writing assignment that you'll be completing next week. Okay, so let's get started. What do you mean by reflection or reflective writing? I'll use Sandra Giles' article that you will have available on Blackboard, and I've annotated and highlighted some points that I'd like for you to focus on and think about as you're reading through the article and thinking about reflection, and as you start thinking about your reflective writing assignment. So let's start with the definition. Reflection or reflective writing, as Sandra says, are umbrella terms that refer to any activity that asks you to think about your own thinking. So this is what we call metacognition. Cognition has to do with thinking. Metacognition means that you're thinking about your own thinking. And in the context of a writing course, reflection and metacognition is thinking about your thinking about writing. So you're thinking about your writing process, you're thinking about your writing habits, you're thinking about your writing decisions, what decisions you make while writing, what thinking goes into these decisions. This is what we mean by reflection or reflective writing. And as two of the composition scholars, Kathleen Blake Yancey and Jane Bowman Smith, they say reflection records a student's process of thinking about what she or he is doing while in the process of that doing. So, what happens in your mind as you're writing? Okay, so we focus on things like audience and purpose. We already discussed these in Unit 1 in the context of your narrative. You may be asked to evaluate or assess your piece of writing or your development as a writer in general. This is going to be a journey throughout this course. I'll always ask you to reflect on your own thinking, to reflect on your own writing practices and writing decisions, because the more aware you are of these processes and these practices, the more intentional you'll be while writing, and the more you'll take control over your writing process and writing development as a writer. I'll skip some parts of the article because I don't want to spend much time on everything. I'd like for you to focus on particular things. You can read the entire thing later on Blackboard. One particular example of reflective writing is what Sandra Giles calls my letter to the reader assignment. Simply, this is similar to the revision plan you composed in discussion 5, but a longer version of that. So, what she asked her students to do is to write a cover letter for the essay, and she asked them to think about several points about the writing process, the revision process. And if you go, as we go over these points, you realize that we've done a lot of these things, but in portions and in chunks. We did that in the brainstorming discussion, we did that in the revision plan, and you'll do the last stretch of that in your reflective writing assignment next week. So, for example, here, the first point is tell your reader what you intend for the essay to do for its reader. Describe the purpose and the effect you want it to have on the reader. This is very similar to what we did in the brainstorming my narrative discussion post that we had a couple weeks ago, in which you thought about the purpose, the audience, the details, the moments that you'd like to include, and the details of your literacy narrative. So, this is already kind of reflection because you have to think about your thinking. What do you want your writing to achieve? What's your purpose? Who your audience is? What message do you have for your audience? This is all kind of thinking about writing or reflection. And then if you look at number two here, yes, this point, not number two. How did comments from your peers in peer workshop or peer review in our case help you? How did any class activities on style, editing, or whatever help you? So this is very much similar to the revision, my revision plan, the discussion number 5 that you completed last week after we finished the peer review and you received my feedback. When I asked you to look at all the feedback you received from me and from your peers, to start thinking about your revision. So this is thinking about your writing. This is thinking about your decisions that you're gonna make to improve your writing and to take your narrative to the next level. So this is kind of reflection. So if you think about it, we've been engaging in reflection from earlier in the course. It's not just when the time comes for us to write that reflective writing. No, we do it all the way, but we don't call it reflection all the time. If you skip that part, and I'll take you to the next one. Yes, examples from real students. So Sandra Giles here includes some examples. I'm not going to read everything again, but I'll read some examples that I highlighted here for you to think about how that works. So for example, here we have one of her students. He also noted, I chose to write a paragraph about everything that can happen to a diver that's not prepared, but after reviewing it, I was afraid that it would scare an interested diver away. I chose to take that paragraph out and put a few warnings in the conclusion on so the aspiring diver would not be clueless. What happens here is that that student is reflecting on their thinking, their decisions. So their initial thinking was to include a paragraph about everything wrong that can happen to a diver. And then when they thought about it, when they reflected, when they looked at it from the audience perspective, they thought that this might scare people away from diving. So they decided to take that paragraph out and then replace it with just a few warnings in the conclusion. These are all decisions that you make. When you were writing your revision plan, some of you said, I'm going to do this. I realized that I need more of this. This is all thinking about your writing. This is all reflecting. And then you will you enacted these decisions as you revised the narrative and you made these decisions take shape into your narrative. Another student says, at first, my organization was off because I didn't know if I should start off with a personal experience, which included telling a story, or start with a statistic. This is kind of a different writing genre from the literacy narrative that we're working on right now. But you can see that the writer here or the student here was debating two different options. And this is exactly what you've been doing. You were debating whether or not to include details, whether or not to include images, what kind of images you would include, what kind of details you would add. This is all thinking about writing. This is all reflection and metacognition. Okay? Now, the more important part for me is the habit of self-reflecting writing. This is the core of our inclusion of reflection in our course. As I said, this is going to be a journey. It's not going to be one time per assignment that you'll reflect. As you've noticed, we've done that in the brainstorming, in the revision plan, and now as you're revising your essays, or if you have finished revising, you've already made a lot of decisions. So I'll read here what Sandra Giles says. One of the most important functions of reflective writing in the long run is to establish in you, the writer, the student, a habit of self-reflective thinking. This is my ultimate goal for you, is to develop that habit, to Be reflective all the time. Every single time you put a pen to a paper or you start a Word document to write an assignment or to do anything writing, you start thinking about your writing. You start reflecting on your thinking and on your writing. So you might play the teacher pleasing game, but that's really not what we want. This is not what I want. I don't want you to write what you think will please me as a teacher. This is not the goal. I'm not looking for something that pleasant and nice and it's like, oh, she wants me to say this, I'll give her that. No. Teachers, and this applies to me as well, don't want you to say certain things. We or I want you to think in certain ways. It's the thinking behind the writing that really matters to me, not really what you put in writing. You will notice that you have formed a habit of thinking reflectively, almost invisibly. The more you practice reflection in brainstorming, in determining what details you need, in determining the purpose and audience of your writing, in thinking about what you've learned from that experience in the literacy narrative, the more you think about these decisions, you will become more reflective and it will become a seamless and more uh, what you do it more on the go without much thinking because it's becoming part of you, part of your writing process. And not only will it help you in writing classes, but in any future writing projects for biology class, say, or even further in the future in writing that you may do on the job, such as incident reports or annual reports for a business. So this is exactly what I want you to think about, that the decisions you're making right now, the thinking that goes into these decisions right now, the more you practice these, the more you'll be able to take these decisions and this pattern and habit of thinking to any other writing you're doing. Even if you're posting something on social media, you will start thinking, okay, who's my audience here? Why exactly I'm doing this? What kind of language or emojis or reactions or whatever I can include here to make it more vivid and to deliver my message clearly? So you will find yourself thinking about these decisions as you go in every writing you'll do on social media, in your personal life, in another course. If you have a job that requires some kind of writing, you'll see that happening all the time and very seamlessly, and it becomes um, more automatic in your life. So I hope that this brief introduction to reflection set the scene for your first reflective assignment that I'll introduce in a following video. Okay, so I'll see you in that video.